Hello and welcome to another exciting Blender tutorial. Today we'll be doing an intro to modeling for absolute beginners. Let's start with the cube and end with the TIE fighter. All right, first thing I'm going to do is hit A to select all and X to delete everything, just to clear out my scene. Now I'm going to go Shift A and I'm going to create a UV sphere. Now before I click or do anything, I want to come over here to this little pop-up that's appeared. There's a little triangle that's next to it. If I click that triangle, I get some extra options for this sphere, and I want to change the number of faces that I have because I don't need this much geometry. I'm going to drop my segments down to 16, so basically halving it, and I'm going to drop my rings down to 8. Now I'm going to click on this sphere and I want to rotate it so that it's facing along the X, but we're going to go into edit mode to do that because I want to do all this stuff to the mesh in edit mode. So I'm going to go Tab to enter edit mode, A to select all, and then R to rotate, and Y, and then I'm going to type in 90. So that rotates with R 90 degrees to get a precise rotation off to the side like this. Now, when you're in edit mode, you can move between vertex selection to select the vertexes, edge selection to select edges, or face selection to select whole faces. You can also move between these by hitting 1, 2, and 3 on the number row at the top of your keyboard. So that's really useful to quickly move between those. We're going to go into vertex mode and select this vertex at the front and hit X. And we're going to select vertex. We're going to delete the vertex. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is how to select a row of edges. I'm going to go to edge mode with number 2 on my number row. Now, if I hold down Shift, I could click and select each of these edges one at a time to select this full circle. But that's a slow process. And sometimes you misclick. You can see I misclick there and I'm grabbing the ones on the inside. So I'm going to deselect everything with Alt A. And there's a trick in Blender for selecting a whole loop of edges, so a continuous loop of edges. If I hold down Alt and click, it will select every edge that's connected to this edge in one big loop. That's a really useful way. This works with faces as well. I could hold down Alt and click this face here, or I could click here to get the alternating row around here, and it will continue until it runs out of four-sided faces. You see this is a triangle, so it doesn't know where to go from here, but as long as it has four-sided faces, Blender knows which direction to take that selection. So back to 2, Alt click to get that loop. Now we're going to use the first tool for modeling, which is the extrusion tool, and you activate that by hitting E on your keyboard. Now if you forget any of these hotkeys, they're all up here. You can grab them all in these different menus up here. So, or you can also hit F3 in your viewport and type them in. So I could type in extrude, and you'll see I get all these different extrusion options, and these will tell you what are the different hotkeys for these different options, okay? So with these edges selected, I'm going to hit E to extrude. And now, before I click or commit anything, you can see I've got these new edges. I'm just going to hit the escape key. What that does is it leaves those edges right where they originated. We don't move them at all, and it just kind of releases them. So right now we've got a double up. We've got 2 sets of edges right on top of each other. Now I want to scale them down and make them smaller. So I'm going to hit S, and I'll move my mouse in. You can see now those edges are scaling in to the median point of all those selected edges. So we're moving in like this. So what we're going to do is we are going to come in a little bit like this, and we're going to leave a little gap for the main porthole. All right, now the next thing we're going to do is I want to push this set of faces in, but I don't want to move everything else around it. So if I go to face mode, hold down Alt, click to get the loop. Right now, if I grab X and move in, you can see it's like distorting the whole shape of the sphere. And I don't want that. I want to kind of push these in as if, and create basically a new row of faces on the edge. So with these guys selected, I'm going to use the extrude tool again to pull that off. So I'm going to hit E, and now I'm just going to move in, and automatically it's going to lock it on the Z direction. And I'm going to move it in. If for some reason it doesn't, you can always click and then hit G to grab and lock it on whatever direction you want. But I'll bring that in there just a little bit so I get this nice loop, this little inset edge here. And I want to get rid of these faces. I don't want these guys. So again, I'm going to hold down Alt and click to get that loop. And then X, and this time I'm going to delete faces. So now I've brought this sort of window area in a little bit. Now what I want to do is go to edge mode, hold down Alt, grab this edge and hit E and S. So I've extruded, and now I'm scaling, and I'm going to go in just a little bit until I create a little lip right there. And now what we're going to do is use the next tool. We're going to use the Bevel tool to split some edges. What we're going to do is we're going to go to edge mode, and I'm going to select this edge, this edge, this edge, this edge, this one, and this one. So we've got these edges selected, okay? And with those guys selected, I'm going to hit Control B which is the hotkey for beveling. And I'll drag out. Now you can see the further I drag, the wider this gets. And I want to just make this a similar width to that inner ring, that inner lip that we've just created. That looks about the same. So I'm going to click to commit. And now I want to select this inner lip too. So I've got these guys selected and this inner area selected. But you'll notice if I hold down Alt and click, it's not going to work, right? They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. So Blender doesn't know which way the loop is carrying. So in this case, I need to select these guys manually. So I'm just going to shift click and select each one. And then I'm also going to click to select these guys, making sure that I also get the little triangle in between them. Now with all of those selected, I'm going to hit E again, and I could just move out. It'll move along the direction they're facing, or I could hit escape to leave the move mode and just manually say, okay, I want G to grab and X to lock on the X. I'm going to bring it out just a little bit so that it's almost all the way back out, but not quite. There we go. So now we've got the little window area. Now, it's getting a bit hard to see what my mesh looks like. So I'm going to make a change to my viewport. And this is really great when you're doing modeling to do this. So we're in flat shade mode at the moment. I'm going to click on this little drop down, and this will give me extra options for how my viewport rendering is done. I'm going to switch from studio lighting to matte cap. And already you can see it makes a difference. It makes things a little bit punchier. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to turn on cavity. And what cavity does is it's going to begin to shade the edges and any cavities that we have in our mesh. I'm going to change the type from screen to both. And then I want to turn up the valley on both of these pretty far, actually, maybe even all the way. So now I can really see all the edges and stuff quite clearly. And this is useful for doing modeling. I'm also going to right click on this sphere and I'm going to select Shade Auto Smooth. What that's going to do is it's going to look for any faces that don't have much angle between them. Blender will see that and shade it smooth. So it pretends like it's a smooth surface. The angle grows, it starts to shade as if it's sharp. Now let's close out this window with the next tool. So I'm going to go to Edge Mode, hold down Alt and click to get this edge loop right here. And with this selected, I'm going to hit F3 to bring out my search menu and type in Grid Fill. And I'm going to select Grid Fill. And Grid Fill will attempt to fill out this grid. Now I can change the offset just to line it up so it's straight up and down. And then I can experiment with turning simple banding on and off to change the way it interpolates. I think this looks nice and clean, so I'm going to leave it like that. Great. So I've completed this front portion. Now what I want to do is add in a little bit of extra detail. So let's go to face mode. And I'm going to select a few of these faces. Let's see, which ones do I want? I'm going to select these two and these two right here. And I'm going to use the next tool, which is Inset. Inset is activated by hitting I on your keyboard. And when you hit I, you can see what happens is it basically extrudes and scales at the same time and like on the surface of whatever it is you have selected. So I can bring these guys in just a little bit, and then I'm going to hit E to extrude and X and bring them out. Alt A to deselect, and then shift select those guys, I to inset and bring that in right there, and then E and X and bring it out a little bit. There we go, looking good. Now we can add even more detail. I could hit Control R, which is another great tool. This is the loop cut tool. Now Control R creates a loop cut, which you can see as I move my mouse around, I get this yellow highlight. And it's basically showing me, okay, where do you want this loop to go? Now I want this loop to go here, so I'm going to click, and then it changes modes. Now it's in this move mode where it's sliding that edge we just created up and down and around on the surface of my mesh. Now there's another thing that's cool to know about this. If I go back to Control R and it's still in the yellow mode, you can roll your mouse wheel and it'll give you multiple cuts. And that's a great way to create some cool detail. But I'm just going to use one cut. I'll click and I'm going to slide it in a little bit and then click to commit. I'm going to go to face mode and I will hold down Alt and select this loop right here. And I'm going to hit E and X and bring it out. I'll grab this loop with Alt and hit E and X and just come forward a little bit there. All right, so now we need to build out the wing. So I'm going to select, actually what we'll do is we'll make the wing and then we'll kind of build the connecting bridge between the two of them. So I'm going to leave edit mode and we're going to create a new object. I'm going to go Shift A, Mesh, Plane. Let's grab it, move it over here. So I'm going to hit G to grab and Y, and we're going to bring it right over here. I'm going to go into edit mode with tab, hit A to select all, and then I'm going to rotate X 90 degrees just to turn it and face it up. Now, a TIE fighter has this sort of hexagon-like wing, so we're going to build that out first. I'm going to go to vertex mode by hitting 1, and I'm just going to grab these two and hit S to scale and X, and it will scale towards each other there. And the reason why it's moving in that specific way and scaling towards is because I've got this up here. The transform pivot is set to median point. You can always change this, and it will change where the pivot is between anything that you have selected. Median point is a good default, and I tend to keep it there for most actions. That means that it's always going to do whatever command you're doing. We're at a pivot point that's created by looking at the average position of everything that's selected. So that's why when I have median point and I hit S and X, it's scaling to the middle of both of these guys. So I'm going to come here and drag a box around these bottom ones and hit G and Z and bring them up. Just around here is close to the origin, that little orange dot. And I might grab these guys and bring them down a little bit. That looks pretty good. Then I'm going to hit A to select all, and I'm going to go Shift-D to duplicate and hit Escape. Now I've got two versions of the same thing. Then I'm going to hit S to scale and Z to lock it on the Z, and then I'm going to type -1, and that will flip the whole thing. If I lost you with that, just rewatch that bit, and you'll get used to it. You can always enter a value at the end for how much you want to do something. So that string of commands is really useful, and you'll do it a lot. I'm going to hit G to grab and Z to lock it on the Z and bring it down. Now I want to line it up perfectly with this other vertex. So I'm going to do something called snapping. I'm going to turn it on right here with the little magnet icon, and then I'll click this drop down, and I want to snap specifically to a vertex. So I'm going to switch to vertex snapping mode. Now with this activated, if I hit G to grab, when I move my mouse close to any vertex, you can see it's even snapping to this thing. Blender will attempt to take what I have and connect it. So I will bring it up like that and click to commit. Now I'll turn snapping off. Okay, so it looks like I've got one continuous piece of geometry here, but the reality is I've got two vertexes right on top of each other in the same place. And I want to fuse these guys together. So the best way to do that is to hit A to select everything, and then I'm going to hit M to merge. Again, you could just type F3 and grab merge, but I'm going to hit M, and this will bring up a little mini menu here. And I want to merge by distance. I'll click this, and you get this pop-up up here. It's blocked by my text here, but now you can see the merge distance is set to 0.0001. So basically, any vertex that's super close to another one, merge them together. And when we do that, I'll just undo that and do it again. So F3, merge by distance. You'll see right here, I get this pop-up that says removed two vertices. So that's an indication of whether or not it worked. And sure enough, now if I click here, you can see those are unified. But now with our little scale trick, there's also something wrong. I don't know if you can see this, but the shading's a bit funny, right? There's this like dark gray and light gray. Blender's a bit confused. And this is something that you run into a lot when you're modeling, and you'll notice it in a lot of weird ways. You might have a bizarre result with your bevel or with your subdivision surface or something else later down the track, and you might be confused about what's going on. I'm going to show you what's wrong here, but we're not going to fix it yet. And I'm going to show you what it looks like if we go a bit further down the track with this kind of a mistake. So right now, I'm going to switch over here to my face orientation right here under the widgets menu. I'm going to turn on face orientation. Now this colors the faces based on which direction they're facing. And by facing, if I go into edit mode, you get this little extra button, and I'm going to turn on normals and drag the sides out there. A normal is the direction a face is pointing. You can see these guys are pointing in opposite directions. So when we duplicated that and scaled on the Z and -1 and flipped it, it's also kind of flipped the direction that it was facing. And this can confuse Blender when it comes to shading and how it operates on things, because it thinks that these are basically pointing two different directions. So let me turn all that off, and let me show you what the impact is of this. So let's keep going. I'm going to make this look a little bit more even. So I'm going to grab these two and hit S and X and bring this in until this is kind of squared up a bit better. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I'm going to go to edge mode, and I will shift select these edges. So I'm going to select these edges and hit E and S to scale, and I'm going to come out just a little bit. And then I want to do it again. I'm going to hit E and S and bring it out a lot. Now I'm going to hit S and X and scale this in a bit, and S and Z, just trying to get this right. Might go a bit bigger, make the whole thing smaller in a minute. I think if the proportions are more like this when it comes to a TIE fighter. Feel free to have different variation in yours, but this kind of a shape looks about right. Now I hit E again and S and just come out a little bit to create a bit of a lip, and SX just to make sure it's thick on the X that matches the thickness on the Y. And that looks pretty good. All right, great. Now you can still see this shading issue, but we'll get to that in a minute. All right, so next thing I want to do is I want to hit 3 to go to face mode, and I'm going to select these faces right here. And I want to hit I to inset. But what I'm going to do is make a change. So I'm just going to go in just a little bit like this. I'll click, and again, I'll get the pop-up. If it's not up for you, you just might see it down like this. You just need to click that to bring it up. And I want to click this option, individual. You can see what that does is now each inset is individually insetting on each face that's selected, as opposed to being one big group. And that's really useful with inset, turning that on and off to get different results. Now I'm going to hit E and Y and just go in a little bit, not a whole lot, just to bring that in. And then I might hold down Alt and select this group and hit E and Y and bring it out like that. And then let's select these two, and I'm actually going to delete those faces. Go to edge mode with 2 and click this to grab this loop. And then I'm going to hit E and grab Y, and then E and S, and then E and bring that in on the Y, and then E and S, E and Y, and I'm just creating some variations. So scaling this one down, E and Y, bring it in, E and S, and then I'm going to fill this hole in with grid fill. So I'm going to hit F3 and type grid fill. And again, I will adjust the offset until it looks like it lines up really nicely. Cool. All right, great. Now we got this neat looking thing. Now, one thing that really helps hard surface meshes look more realistic is to have a bevel. And a bevel is when an edge isn't perfectly straight. It's got a little bit of a slant to it. And we can do that manually, but it's better to do it with a modifier in Blender, because then you have more control in the end over your base mesh. So I'm going to click on the wrench tab here with this wing selected, and I'll click add modifier, and I'm going to grab a bevel. And I will put my bevel on, and we'll just leave the default settings for now. And you'll notice we're getting some really weird results. Look at this. So this thing looks like it shifted off. So when you see something weird like this, usually the answer is you need to flip the direction of your faces. So let's go back to that problem and fix it. I'm going to turn face orientation back on. And sure enough, you can see that problem has carried through into my mesh as I've been doing this modeling. I'm going to hit tab to go into edit mode, hit A to select all, and I'm going to come up here to mesh, normals, and I'm going to click recalculate outside. You can see that fixed it up. So now the bevel modifier is working as expected. Turn face orientation back on. So there you go. So it's a pretty easy fix, which is good. Okay, great. I think this looks pretty nice. I might increase the segments to 2, and I'm going to right click and shade auto smooth as well. And that should give me a really nice result. All right, now we've got this backside that's a bit empty, so we need to extend that a little bit. I'm going to go into edit mode, go to edge mode, and Alt to click and grab that set of edges, and grab Y just to scoot them back a bit so they encompass the object. And then I'm going to put a modifier on it. I'm going to look for the mirror modifier. And the mirror modifier, I'm going to put in after the bevel, and I will mirror on the Y. Not the X, just the Y. Now I need to select everything and grab Y and slide it away from the origin. The origin is that orange dot right in the middle. You see, the further I get from that, the mirror is equally distant from that point. So if I bring it really close to that point, these guys are going to line up. Now, there's a bit of a gap here, so I'm going to turn on clipping and make sure merge is turned on. And then I'm going to bring them so they're a little bit close, and that should seal that gap. I might scale it down a little bit, make it a bit smaller. Now let's create the connecting bridge between these two objects. I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm going to go to face mode with 3, and I will select these 6 faces. Maybe even those down there too. So 6, 7, 8. And I'm going to hit E and Y, bring them out like that, and S to scale. E and Y again, S to scale. Maybe a bit further, and then E and Y, and scale it right down. And then I want to flatten this out. So I'm going to scale on the Y. And if you notice, the closer I get to 0, they get flatter and flatter and fatter. So what I can do is just hit 0 while I'm still in that scale mode, and then hit return. It will flatten those faces. Now let's add a bit more detail. I'm going to select these guys like this. I'm going to hit I to inset, and I'm going to turn off individual, so it's one big inset. And then E and X, and bring it forward. And then I'm going to select these right here and inset those. And then E and X, bring it out. And then these two, I to inset, E and X, bring those forward. And then maybe go in. So I'll inset again, and then E and X, and push these guys in. I to inset, E and X, push them in. Looking good. All right, great. Let's do something on the top. So I'll grab these, let's say, and we'll hit I and go in, and then maybe grab Z and scale it down, and E and scale it down. Looks pretty cool. And I'll do something down here as well. I'll grab this whole section, I come in like that, E and Z come down, and maybe scale that in like that. Looks pretty cool. Now let's do what we did with this and add some modifiers to it. So I'm going to come over here and add a bevel. I'm going to turn my segments up, and sometimes with your mesh, depending on how you've modeled things, you might find you have better results if you switch from offset to percent, and that will give you like kind of a brute force bevel, which can be really useful. I'm going to add another one, a subdivision surface modifier. Now this is one that you're going to use a lot, and basically what it does is it takes your mesh and it rounds it out. So I'm going to click add modifier and type in subdivision surface. And I'm going to turn my viewport levels and my render levels up a bit, maybe to 3. That will subdivide it more and more. And you can see you get this nice rounded effect. All right, cool. Let's bring all this together. I'm going to hit G and Y to bring my wing over so it's lined up here. But now I want all this to be repeated over on this side. But you can see our object is quite symmetrical. So we can use a mirror modifier again. And I want to mirror this mirror modifier along the Y, not the X. So I'm going to turn off X. And I just need to make sure clipping is turned on as well. And now I can grab this and Shift-D, Y, and bring it on over. And there you have it, our very own TIE Fighter. I hope you really enjoyed this process and learned a lot about modeling and how you can use it to really create anything you want with Blender. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you really enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Check out the Patreon where you can get the full uncut version of this tutorial, which is basically the same as this one, but usually they're a lot longer and there's a lot more detail. So if there's other tutorials you're interested in and you'd like to check out the full version where I go through a lot of extra detail, you can go check that out. Special thanks to everybody who supports this channel on Patreon and everyone who supports by joining on YouTube. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you so much. And if you'd like to join them, links are in the description below. Please check it out. You can get this project file if you join Patreon this month or next month. It's always available the 2 months that the tutorials come out. You can get the project files, and then after that they go away. So if you're keen, go to Patreon, check it out, see if it's this month, and subscribe and get this and use it. All right, I'll catch you later. Thanks so much. Bye.